Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. More Pillage here as we keep working our way through the Roman expansion and to the earlier time period before the typical Pillage timeline starts with the sort of arrival of the Vikings. So today we have one that does reoccur, a faction that is, and that is the Saxons, but these are very much the early Saxons compared to the Saxons of, again, the initial rules from the Pillage rulebook. So this is, again, from the Fall of Rome expansion. So there's a lot going on here, and these guys will play a little bit different than the aforementioned Saxons. So let's take a look here at what we got with equipment and special rules before we get into the list proper. So first up, Children of the Marshes. So we can ignore the movement penalty from marshy and boggy ground. Also a +1 bonus to defense rolls in melee while in marshy or muddy terrain. Agree with your opponent which parts of the board trigger the special rule before the game. Naturally makes sense. Should just be a good golden rule anyway, for as far as what terrain does and what terrain counts for whatever special rules, right? But that is a neat little ability to have. So if we do have some of that terrain in the table, or on the table rather, and just getting in there and taking advantage of it, we can move without penalty. The opponents can't, and then we actually are even better at fighting in that. So if we have some heavily armored troops in there, they're going to be incredibly difficult to dislodge. So depending on the scenario, if we can work that in our favor or force the opponent to cross over that kind of terrain while we're maybe guarding another side of it, that's huge. So moving on then, idol. So the Saxons are pagans and worship many gods. The Saxon player must place a wooden idol anywhere on the table that's outside of both deployment zones. If this idol is destroyed, the Saxons must make a morale check at the end of the turn. The idol is rated as fully armored with 2 HP. Being wooden, it can be burned. Once at a light, though, it is considered destroyed. So aside from that, though, it doesn't really give us any kind of bonus. So it's just really a severe penalty that we kind of have to deal with. That being said, right, just as long as it's outside of the deployment zones. So I think ideally we set this up in as obscure and tough to reach location as possible and really just make it not worth the opponent's time, hopefully, to come out and go get that. But we may want to leave at least somebody to guard that, even if it's just one figure, or maybe some ranged troops of our own that can cover anyone approaching that. But that is something to consider. Cool modeling opportunity, though. But so far, the only faction that really has a restriction like this where we have to put something out there. Finally, Men Without Kings. A Saxon army doesn't have to include a chieftain, so that's a game breaker right there. We have not seen that yet either. If no chieftain is chosen, Saxons never have to check for morale because their chieftain has been killed, duh. So they didn't have one to start with. So that's actually pretty cool. And then the points saved on that just lets us maybe get an extra body or two. Furthermore, peerless sailors, so they were talented boat builders and fearsome pirates. Saxons always get their charge bonus when fighting aboard ships, even attacking across obstacles. So that's massive. So really, these guys are kind of what Vikings would be, that we'd want them to be as far as naval fighting so far. And then also, Saxon ships move 25 inches instead of the usual 20. So huge abilities right there. So all in all, just a lot of cool, flavorful stuff already as far as their special rules are concerned. Now, they do get a couple of talents, which one of them here, Shield Bash, is insanely expensive. 80 gold pieces. And again, the Saxons here covers the Saxons, Jutes, Angles, and Frisians. So, while engaged in melee, warriors equipped with a shield can use it to make an improvised weapon attack in addition to their usual attacks. Now, that then helps justify the cost a little bit. So, again, probably not something we want for small games, right? 80 gold is at least a couple of bodies that we could have instead. But for those larger games, and then if we're really just then going to invest in that, it's basically giving everybody a second attack. Even if it is an improvised weapon, you never know. The dice can swing in your favor and maybe get that extra damage through over time. So really a powerful ability for those models that have the shield. And really, if we're just getting a bunch of cheaper troops on the field, maybe with like light or minimal armor and not paying all the points for that, having that shield really, again, is going to double our offensive output. So if we can get a lot of bodies there, just doubling the dice will hopefully work in our favor. Finally, Magic Sword. So let's see what that's about. So 40 plus the cost of a hand weapon. Saxons and Frisians only. A chieftain, so we would have to have the chieftain here. A chieftain equipped with a magic sword can reroll failed defense rolls. So basically, not real magic, right? Because this is still a historical game, but basically just as it says here, serpentine imagery, and that's there to protect the wielder, at least what they believed. But hey, imagined feelings of invulnerability, that's all cool. But here we get a reroll failed defense rolls. And if we combo this, if we start thinking really of what we can do to maximize the Saxons' value in this, if we can get a chieftain who's fully armored up and has the magic sword, and we're fighting in marshy terrain, well, we already have a +1 bonus to defense rolls there, and then we get a reroll potentially. Huge. Also, if he has the shield on top of everything, now if we're including everything here, if we have the shield bash ability, right, so our chieftain's already going to be a better fighter, and now he's going to get that extra improvised attack each time around too, so pretty nasty stuff. So let's jump on to the list itself. So a couple of key things here. We can't form shield walls, which is interesting, and makes sense though, right? Wouldn't have been necessarily a tactic they had developed at that point. And with the shield bash technically ability there, right, they're less concerned about the defense with shields and more just like, hey, bashing people with that. Weather as well, we're not affected by heavy rain, so that's pretty cool too. So really we got two weather/terrain things, right? Don't care about heavy rain and don't care about marshes. So, and they're just good fighters on the water too. So moving on, we do get healers. So warriors, chieftains, and healers. No cataphracts, of course, nor supply wagons. Makes sense. So the chieftain, so far everything seems normal cost here, right? Armor at 10. So I think if we had the Romans, right, everything was much cheaper there. But it makes sense given, they were so late Rome at the time. But nonetheless, 10 and 5 is fine there. Melee weapons, of course, free for improvised. Spears are free here too, so that's pretty cool that we don't have to pay for that. We are paying 10 gold a piece, though, for the hand weapons, so that's obviously going to double the cost of the basic warrior. So, if we're looking for a fully kitted up warrior, we got 10, 20, 25, 35 a piece for that. Thankfully, the chieftain is not more expensive as far as his gear is concerned. Ranged weapons, no slings, interestingly. We got the angons, though, and the bows. The bows are, again, just so expensive, but we probably would want a couple of them just to at least be able to respond in kind to enemies with bows. But 30 gold is going to probably push that out of small games into the medium to large games, just to be able to at least have a couple of them. Finally, no horses for these guys. I think the regular Saxon force, it's been a minute, does have access to the horses, though. But at this point, the early Saxons, no. But we do have access to a banner, but also surprisingly, no warhorn here. We understand the no warhounds, of course. But yeah, no warhorn. It does seem a little bit surprising. But 30 for the banner, which again would be probably a pretty good investment. But again, it's another pretty big cost-pointed thing there. Shield bash, magic sword, all very expensive, but overall pretty cool faction. Also, without for the range there, not seeing any like javelins or anything is maybe a little bit surprising too. Feel like that would have probably been a thing still, but that's all right. All in all, fun factions, cool to have too, since we were playing mainly Saxons for the regular version of Pillage, at least testing it out model-wise with this and just kind of seeing what a force would look like. But yeah, no cavalry, we got the banners, but we do get access to that healer as well, so maybe something to consider sprinkling in just for the extra little bit of defense that they can provide. So it's just a lot of neat combos here again with their special rules, potential talents that we want to bring in, and then just kind of seeing what we can do to maximize the list here. I think going cheaper on a lot of the basic warriors, maybe ditching the armor, but just getting the shield at least, and then maybe just investing in shield bash as a sort of catch-all there for that, just to go more offense and not worry so much about the defense. But that could be fine. The lack of armor could be fine because we could ideally have enough terrain where there is marshy or boggy terrain and trying to fight out of that, but that's not always going to be the case either. So a lot of choices to make, but a fun faction nonetheless. Guys, let us know if you've played the early Saxons for Pillage. Hit us up in the comments, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.